Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, taking a walking tour with Classic Journeys, presented by Edward and Susie Piegza, the founder of Classic Journeys, travel and leisure's best tour operator multiple times. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Over to you guys.
Hey, Rob. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Edward.
Hi, and I'm Susie Piegza.
Pleasure to meet everybody, and thanks for joining us. Now that you've seen us, we're going to do a little show and tell on Classic Journeys, and so we're going to share our screen and take you through some parts of our website and our catalog to kind of tell you the story of why we do what we do, how we do it, with whom we do it, and what that means for you if you choose to travel with us. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. Rob, I assume you can see our screen right now?
We're looking good.
Okay, great. So welcome to the Classic Journeys website. This is a little quick video of that we shot on our different trips that show different aspects of traveling with Classic Journeys. And we'll go back to that later. But for right now, I'd like to share a photo, which apparently is not loading right now. So we'll look at it a slightly different way. And that is, this happens to be a gentleman named Luca, and he is a chef along the Amalfi Coast of Italy, and he's with two Classic Journeys guests. And I know everyone's muted right now, so I won't ask you to say it aloud, but think to yourselves, when was the last time you were traveling and you had a moment like the one you're seeing right here, where you're just so overcome with joy and being in the moment that you just want to hug the person that you just met or with whom you're traveling? For us, if you asked us to articulate in one photograph why we do what we do at Classic Journeys, it is for moments like that. We truly believe at Classic Journeys that moments that connecting with other people, particularly when you're traveling, fuels your soul in a way that very few other things in life can do. And we're very, very fortunate that we happen to have relationships with, I'm going to scroll down a little bit more.
And this is why we founded the company in 1995. We had this desire to connect with other people around the world. And how do we do that in very small groups and really get to know a region, immerse ourselves in a region in usually a 7-day, 6-night perfect exploration. And
so in order to create these moments, we have these relationships with amazing, well-connected, expert local guides around the world. We operate trips in just over 50 countries around the world. And in those 50 countries around the world, we have very personal relationships with about 300 expert local guides. I'll point to this gentleman right here in the middle, whose name is Christian, and he's one of our head guides in Chile. I love this photograph of Christian, not just because I took it in February of 2020 in Chile when we were traveling with him. He happens to be on an estancia in Patagonia, and he's holding a tray of pisco sours, as you can see. To me, if we had to create sort of a persona of a male Classic Journeys guide, and we'll show you personas of a female Classic Journeys guides too later, but Christian looks just, I think he's like the perfect guide. He's got that awesome jawline, that he's just, perfectly trimmed beard and everything, and he's taken us to this amazing place and given us access to the couple that own this beautiful estancia, and arranged for horseback riding and beautiful hikes that day, and watching them, how their sheepdogs move the sheep all around the estancia. And then he's also super hospitable. And so he's just a perfectly well-connected friend that helps us to access the walks that we share with our guests and the local people that we introduce you to. And so that sort of like then leads into what is a walking tour, and what are we trying to do when we take you on a walking tour. So I think that if you were to ask our very good friend Ben, who is the founder of NatHab, what's the best way to explore in the world, Ben would say, I want to take you to far-flung places around the world and put you face to face with the wild animals and the wildlife that inhabit this spectacular planet. And in doing so, you will gain an appreciation for how special our environment and the species that inhabit it are. And then you'll want to join with Ben in protecting the planet and the species that live in our planet. Well, Susie and I and our team at Classic Journeys feel exactly the same way that Ben does about the wildlife and the planet. We just happen to think about it from the lens of protecting and sustaining cultures and people and places that inhabit our planet. And so we just think that if we can take you to amazing places around the world, and we can introduce you to fantastic people who live in the Sacred Valley in Peru and in Chile, and you know, all
winemakers in Tuscany,
winemakers in Tuscany and Cuba. You know, that by you meeting those people, you'll share in our passion for how special these cultures are, and how much it fuels your soul for connecting with these people and cultures, and that you'll be able to share in the joy of travel and slow down to really see the world on foot and at eye level, interacting and immersing yourselves with the people and cultures where we explore.
So we do this primarily by providing walks every day. So we stay in really beautiful boutique accommodations, which I think we'll be chatting about as well, what type of hotels and accommodations. But the basis of all of our tours are beautiful cinematic walks. And a walk with a reason. You know, if there's a cute little hill town that we want to explore, we will walk straight from our boutique hotel to the hill town to go explore that day. We always have like Mercedes Sprinter vehicles, what have you, following us. So if it's, you know, warms up, we can drop our coats, or we do a little shopping in the hill town, we can always drop our bags in the support vehicle. And it also provides us an opportunity of, you know, if we walked enough and we want to go back to the hotel and hang by the pool, there's always a support vehicle and driver ready for us. But we really love to go out and stretch our legs, walk enough so that when we're eating dinner that night, we feel like we've burnt enough calories too.
And so, as Susie was describing that, so here's an example of what a walk, you know, what a footpath and a walk with Classic Journeys looks like. So this happens to be along the Path of the Gods on the Amalfi Coast, and it's 3 different Classic Journeys guests who are on that walk, and you can see the village of Amalfi along the Amalfi Coast down in the distance there by the sea. And so our walks, as Susie described them, our walks are meant to be cinematic and spectacular in their own right. So you're out on foot for a couple of hours in the morning and an hour or 2 in the afternoon. What does that mean in terms of mileage? 5 to 8 miles over the course of the day, with part of that in the morning, part of that in the afternoon. And it should be as beautiful as that in its own right. So if you did nothing else than just enjoyed the walk itself would be spectacular. And along the way, you're with our guides who are local and expert in the region. And so you're not having to figure out the logistics of where to walk or how to walk or which path to walk. The guides are arranging all of that. And so you can just go along for the fun of the spectacularness of the walk. And then the walks lead to, you're going to talk about this, the walks lead to really cool interactions that we have with local people, like what we showed at the beginning of this conversation, where we meet up with Luca. It happens that that particular walk leads to a visit with Luca. So this walk goes along the Path of the Gods. We end up going past a 14th century monastery where we actually meet up with the artisans who are restoring the frescoes there. And then it culminates at lunchtime at Luca's family's home, where he has a cave in the hillside where they make their own wine, and they have a pizza oven. And so we do a wine tasting of their local wines, and then he teaches us how to make pizza in the place, of course, where pizza was born, along the Amalfi Coast. And then we sit on the terrace 1,000 feet above the Amalfi Coast, and we celebrate how great life is to be with wonderful local people like this. As Susie said, we've burned off some calories walking for a couple of hours over the morning, and we've had spectacular cinematic views along the way. And now we end up with interactions like this, where you just want to give them a hug and tell them how much you love them.
And the beauty of working with all local guides and other local people is we can have conversations. I remember, a conversation we were talking about the buffalo mozzarella, and should it be made from water buffalo milk versus what we have in the States, which is cow's milk, and to have these, in-depth discussions with local people, having our guides be local to the regions where we run our tours enables us while we're walking. If you see a little, farmhouse, I always go into the idea of, what would you like to buy that farmhouse? What's life like here? And to have local guides who can really give you information on, history, culture, politics, economy, all of that just makes every region come to life.
Hi, we're back here with us for a moment while I navigate you to one other. So I want to share with you. So now we've had a great day on a Classic Journeys trip where we've done a walk in the morning that's really cinematic. And then we've met up with some really cool local person like Luca and his family, where we've, had a really neat lunch, maybe a wine tasting. And then we've done some other really neat walk in the afternoon that might lead us to a shepherd, a potter, a vineyard owner, a naturalist, an historian, whoever's going to make the experience richer. And now it's the end of the day, and we want to settle into accommodations that are really beautifully sited, that are boutique, that are award-winning, and really also contribute to the overall experience of visiting a place. And so on your screen right now, you're seeing our hotel in the nights 2 and 3 of our Sicily trip. So this is called Villa Athena, and it's over here on the left. You can see that it's looking across its pool and tennis court to the Temple of Concordia in the upper right. So this is in the archaeological zone known as the Valley of the Temples. There's only one hotel that is in the Valley of the Temples. It's Villa Athena. It is a spectacular 5-star boutique villa hotel. We are the only company that stays, the only tour company that stays there. And if you can imagine, after having a day of exploring in Sicily, and you come back to this as your hotel, maybe you take a swim in the pool. One of the 2 nights that we're staying there, we dine al fresco, sitting on that terrace poolside, and illuminated above us are the 7 temples in the archaeological zone. And so you're sitting there having dinner, and you're looking up at the night sky, and you see the Temple of Concordia illuminated there. And it's just an incredibly special situation that we're so fortunate to be able to share that with our guests and with our expert guides.
And when we scout a tour region, we really look at meeting with all the local guides, trying to determine who would make the perfect Classic Journeys guide. We're going to the hotels, we're looking at their showers and their sheets and making sure that this is really a Classic Journeys hotel. Are the staff phenomenal? Are they going to provide our guests a really high level of customer service the entire time they're at this stay? And then we also want to make sure food. We're foodies. We love local food. And so for us, it's also important that what we're eating is local. I think we talked about we were 0 kilometer before there was really the farm to table movement. In Italy, what are you going to do? You want to eat the local food, the tomatoes that are grown nearby, the pasta that's being rolled by the little nonna in the kitchen to provide us really fresh food everywhere we go. And I think it's an important part of our tours that we love the food and the people who make it.
And so as you're seeing right here, this happens to be one of our local friends in Provence who owns a little shop. And we always see her at the market when we're fueling up for a day where we're going to go on a walk, where in the middle of the day, instead of going to someone's home or being in a town or village, we're actually going to have a picnic. And so this is gathering picnic supplies for a walk in Provence. Susie mentioned it briefly, and we talked about sustaining local people and cultures. One of the things that is particularly special about what we do is that as a company, we focus on 2 philanthropic areas of outreach where we believe we have a particularly special way to help local people. So we made a determination years ago that the two areas that are of particular importance to Classic Journeys and to us and in our hearts is young children's education and women's economic empowerment. We sort of believe that you can learn a lot about a company by how they treat women and children, or a country, pardon me, how they treat women and children. And so we, in developing countries around the world where we operate our trips, we tend to put our money and support behind children's education and women's economic empowerment. So whether that is helping women in crafts cooperatives in Morocco or in the Sacred Valley in Peru, or children's education in Vietnam and Cambodia and Costa Rica and Ecuador and places like that, we find that if you invest $1 in the United States in a charitable cause, you're usually going to get $1's worth of goods and services in return. And that's great.
And whenever possible, if there's a local school nearby where we have a relationship, we love to go in and bring our guests in also to meet with the local kids and see what's happening in that country as well. So that's always a fun way. Of course, we always bring some school supplies and other things to share, but we also help support some of the more boring parts of the school, upgrading electrical, plumbing, trash management, and recycling also.
So Rob, I think I'm going to talk for a moment now about some things that are kind of unique about traveling with Classic Journeys, where in addition to the spectacular walk, so we've talked about the walks themselves and how they should be cinematic and really beautiful and led by our expert guides, and they should lead to and from really cool experiences that we're having. And we've talked about how our accommodations should be boutique and award-winning and perfectly sited for what we're exploring. And we've talked about food being an important introduction into a people and a culture. The cuisine is not just for nourishment, but it's also for understanding and experiencing a region. Another thing that we do at Classic Journeys is we look for ways that travel in general just sort of maybe is a little frustrating when you're on your own, and how when you're traveling with Classic Journeys, we can just make that travel so much more enjoyable. So let's talk about what we call above and beyond benefits. So at Classic Journeys, we look for, again, those things that are a little bit frustrating, and we remove them or we make them more special. So who among us wants to stand in line when we're checking in at a hotel? Probably none of us. It's not a fun part of the experience. Or moving your bags into your room or out of your room. So in order to get rid of that, we created invisible check-in, which means that our team has you already checked in, so that when you and your group arrive at any one of our hotels, check-in is already done for you. It happens completely seamlessly. The general manager or owner of the hotel welcomes you and our group, and we move your bag seamlessly to your room for you. Often we have a drink waiting for you. For example, when we arrive in Tuscany at our Villa Hotel, the Count and Countess, Corso and Jacqueline, who own the Villa Hotel and are very good friends of ours, they welcome you with glasses of Prosecco and walk you around the villa and the grounds and tell you stories about their life there while your bags are being moved to your rooms. Then when you arrive at your room, your bags are waiting for you. Equally, if you're traveling with us in a wine producing region, and we have a lot of wine producing regions where we travel around the world, then wine is an important part of experiencing the country and the culture as well. Well, we all know that if the 219 of us were to sit down for dinner, we'd have a long discussion about who's having a glass of wine. Are you having red? Are you having white? Should we get a bottle or not? And then at the end of the meal, we have to settle up on who had wine and who didn't and whatnot. So we just remove all of that hassle when you're traveling with Classic Journeys. And you'll find that the Classic Journeys guides will say, hi, it's Susan and Edward, and here we are, and we're in this beautiful wine producing region, Tuscany or Bordeaux or whatever. And all week long, whenever we sit down, we're just going to order some of our favorite wines, and it's complimentary on Classic Journeys, and you can just enjoy them and experience the wines of the region yourself. We also do something that's really fun, which is called perfect pairing dinners. So on a couple of nights of the week, we don't just have dinner included, but the chef where we are eating has actually gone to the market and prepared a special tasting menu just for us and our guests, paired with their favorite local wines. So you really truly get an integration of the wines and the food of the region seen through the eyes and the palate of our chef. Of course, if you have dietary restrictions, our team is expert at accommodating those, and we'll actually ask you ahead of time if you have any dietary restrictions, limitations, or preferences, so that you can travel without that being a concern for you at any time during traveling with Classic Journeys.
And then since our groups are very small, we average about 10 guests per departure, small groups, which helps us to go into things, places that larger groups just can't go into. And we have a lot of local connections, so it also enables us to have access to maybe some places that aren't even open to the general public, but because we're coming with the Classic Journeys group or a small group, we're pretty stealth going through any town, wherever we might be traveling. And then they provide us also access to things, wine, maybe like a wine tasting, where the vineyard just isn't open to the public. They're not going to have buses pulling up with people getting off, but we are allowed to go in, and in some cases have the winery to ourselves and do our own wine tasting with a sommelier who's helping us learn about the wines along the way.
And that's what Susie's talking about with these private access events. So for example, whether it's going into a winery privately, or for example, we go to Stonehenge when it's closed to the public. We actually have special access to visit Stonehenge in the morning at sunrise or in the evening at sunset with no one else there. And so you can imagine walking across the plains in southern England and arriving at Stonehenge, and instead of there being thousands of people there, having just our group, we literally can sit down on the ground, put our backs up against the stone, and open a bottle of champagne and celebrate having private access to it. Or for example, when we're in Cambodia at Angkor Wat, when there's thousands of people standing there and looking at it, trying to catch that reflection on the lake of Angkor Wat, we have special access through literally the side door of Angkor Wat to go visit it without the crowds and before the crowds. So there's just a host of ways that we've created special access for our guests to explore special places and to meet up with special people in a way that's better and different.
And hopefully getting deeper meaning to what the history of the culture of that region is all about.
So Rob, I guess the last thing that we would probably just want to mention before we take questions is that there's a host of different, so fundamentally what we create, so we travel because we're trying to help create these connections for our guests with local people that fuels your soul. We do that with our amazing expert guides around the world, and through them, we get introduced to even more people like Luca that we showed you. And then we create these cultural walking adventures that really empower you to see the world on foot and at eye level. Who travels with us can be couples, friends, guests traveling solo, families. Multi-generational families are a very important part of the group of guests who travel with us. Solo travelers, whether you're married or not or have a significant other, guests traveling solo represent about a third of all of our guests, and they choose to travel with us because they know that they're with a group of fellow travelers who are all trying to explore the world in a similar way, which is to immerse themselves into the history and culture of a people and a place.
And when you join our group, you can count on a group of travelers that are going to be, curious, intellectually curious people, good travelers who are there to learn about a region, a culture, and also enjoy meeting other people. So it's always fun to join a group and meet so many people, and in some cases build friendships that last well beyond when the tour ends.
And so that's kind of that's sort of the overview of Classic Journeys, the why we do it, with whom we do it, how we do it, where we like to stay and what we like to eat, the explorations that we do on foot that lead to these special moments and of connectivity with other people and cultures. And so we'd love to take questions about what we do and how we do it and how you could join us.
All right, thank you. Now, before we do start the question and answer session, I'd like to remind everyone that you can submit questions via the question field on your control panel. With that, let's get to some of these questions. So can you guys talk about what altitudes your hikes take place at for those of us who have some lung issues?
Absolutely. Okay, so that's kind of a great question from the standpoint of, is it going to be very different exploring with Classic Journeys if I go to, say, Chile and I'm in Patagonia versus if I go with Classic Journeys to the Cotswolds in England? So let's kind of collectively understand that we're not trying to climb or summit Kilimanjaro or K2 at Classic Journeys. So our philosophy is that we believe that being on foot with expert local guides on, let's say, easygoing walks. What we mean by that is if you can walk, 3 miles at a time and carry on a conversation with your walking companion, whether that's you're on a golf course or you're in Manhattan, then you ought to be able to enjoy a Classic Journeys trip. When we go and scout a tour, whether that tour is in the gentle rolling hills of the Cotswolds in England, and we're connecting beautiful little villages with technicolor gardens and honey-colored stone houses, or we're in Torres del Paine National Park in Patagonia in Chile, we're crafting the walks in order to have them all be sort of normalized to, hey, if you can do a walk with us in the Cotswolds, you can do a walk with us in Chile. So of course, in some places, there's going to be more elevation. For example, you could be at the Grand Canyon with us doing a walk along the rim. And while we're not summiting anything, the north rim of the Grand Canyon is at 8,000 feet. So just on a level walk on the north rim of the Grand Canyon, you are at 8,000 feet. So naturally, for some of us, there's going to be more shortness of breath associated with that. So of course, our guides are going to be very, very mindful of that, and they're going to lead us at a pacing. Think of like an accordion. Walk a little bit, compress and pause a little bit. Walk a little bit, compress and pause a little bit. Taking in the views, telling stories, introducing us to local people there. And so when we're at more elevation, we're usually walking a little shorter distance, and we're also being mindful of pausing to accommodate that. And
we also provide options that if somebody
right.
has, because there's always, look, in a group, there's always going to be some people who are like, yep, I'm here to go, and I just want to walk as fast as I can, as long as I can. And then there's going to be others who are, I want to stop, I want to take photos, I want to do what have you, and just relax and be able to breathe and talk and enjoy the surroundings. So we do have more than one guide on most of our walks, or we have options. So we can let somebody really take off, stretch their legs, and others who can go at a more relaxed pace. That's part of our tour offering.
Rob, there's an expression we use internally at Classic Journeys, which is that we kiss a lot of frogs in order to find Prince or Princess Charming. And that really is applicable for every guide who we ask to become part of the Classic Journeys family to guide our trips. There's probably 10 guides that we meet who are perfectly nice people, but they're not the right people to be a Classic Journeys guide. For every hotel that we end up working with and staying in as a part of a Classic Journeys trip, there's probably 10 hotels that are just not the right hotel. Same thing with restaurants and activities and visits. And importantly, the same thing with walks. There's so many different walks out there in the world, but not most of them are applicable for Classic Journeys, which doesn't mean we avoid an area. It means we figure out how to explore that area in a Classic Journeys way. For example, when we created our walking program in India, in Rajasthan, it took us years before we brought that tour to life for our guests, because we kept going there and scouting different walks, and we would ask different guides, we want to do a walk in this area, and they would say, well, nobody walks. And we kept hitting brick walls. And then finally we found the right guide who said, oh, well, in Rajasthan, we don't typically walk for avocation like the British love to walk. We walk because we're trying to get from our village where we live to the village where our kids are going to school, or the village where we're going to market, or the village where I work. And so there's all these great walking paths, but it was almost like trying to find the Rosetta Stone, where we realized, oh, don't ask people where they choose to walk. They don't choose to walk anywhere. They walk because they do as part of their daily life, to go to school, to go to market, to go to work. And that sort of opened up a great series of walks that we do there.
Wow, that's great. Well, thanks for doing all that legwork for us. No wonder you guys have such a high quality of trips. So let me ask you this. Now, if I'm not a wine drinker, are these tours for me? And, you know, is that going to cost me any more because of the wine?
That's a great question. We have plenty of guests for whom wine or alcoholic beverages hold no interest for them whatsoever. Think of it as all of the different layers or lenses through which you can see a region, or layers through which you can experience a region. And so it's the smell of, you know, lavender field that you're walking through. It's the visuals of the hill towns that you're seeing, or the color of, you know, colorful dress that women in Morocco, when you're walking through an oasis, are wearing. Or it's the color of flowers, or the clarity of the sky, or the light that inspired Van Gogh to paint there. It's the food that you're eating. Sometimes it's the wine that you're drinking, if that's of interest to you. But by no means do you need to be a wine drinker. These are not tours that are designed for wine aficionados. However, if you are a wine aficionado and that's one way by which you would experience and enjoy a region, then great, choose one of our regions that are in a wine producing area. But equally, I'll bet if you don't drink wine, it might be really fun to sit down with the Count and Countess who own a villa hotel on a wine producing estate and just talk to them about what is it like to own a business in Tuscany and to live your life in Tuscany. You can get a lot out of that discussion with Corso and Jacqueline that has nothing to do with drinking their wine. You can just drink in like the passion that they have for owning and operating a business in Tuscany.
Great. So let me ask you this. Is photography accommodated? And do you have photo-specific tours?
We don't have, unless you're joining us on a private departure where you want the focus to be photography, in which case, absolutely, we have expert photographers around the world who can join one of those tours. That having been said, a fairly significant number of our guides are actually either professional or avocational photographers, and just very good at putting you in the position where, oh, that's a great, actually, I'll give you an example. So there are Classic Journeys guests, a husband and wife, who are avid photographers. They called us up and they said, we want to go on a photo safari in East Africa. And we said, well, we don't run safaris in East Africa, but we know who does. And so we actually introduced them to you guys at NetHab. And we said, talk to NetHab and they'll create a perfect photo safari for you. And by the way, your team did. And they're about to leave on a photo safari in East Africa. Later this year, they're going on a private photography trip to Peru with Classic Journeys. What they wanted to know when they were crafting that trip with us was, would our guides know the perfect places to put them for great photography opportunities? And of course, because you're traveling with expert local guides, the guides can say, oh, the light in this place is going to be perfect at this time of the day. So they'll make sure to have you in that right spot. And so, do we have photography trips where you can like pull a drop-down menu from our website and say, I want to join a photography trip? No. However, if you want to know that you're always going to be in the right spot at the right time to take that great shot, that's why you travel with Classic Journeys, because with our expert guides, they're going to put you in the right spot at the right time.
Great. Thank you for answering that. So can you tell us how many days on average is there a trip, and are there opportunities to do back-to-back trips?
Most trips are 7 days, 6 nights, and many of them are designed to link perfectly for back-to-back trips. And then we help our guests to go between the trips also, so make it a seamless process that you can go from one trip to another and find the perfect combination for you. Or if you want to do your own thing, and you want to go on one trip, and you can just talk to one of our travel experience specialists, and they can work with our guests to determine where are the best additional places where you can go seamlessly from one trip to another and not cross too many time zones.
In fact, Rob, I'm showing you right now on our website under special offers. If you combine, and because so many of our guests do like to combine 2 trips, they feel like, well, if I'm going to go all the way to Italy, for example, maybe I'll do the Amalfi Coast in Sicily back to back, or the Italian lakes in Tuscany, or maybe they'll combine Peru with the Galapagos. Whenever you combine 2 of our trips back to back, we're automatically going to deduct $750 off your combined trip price. Probably most of us are, if you're thinking $750, that gets you, in many places, that covers your airfare or a significant portion of it. And so and then as Susie said, what we also do is we make the connection between those 2 trips for you seamless, so that you're not having to worry about, well, how do I link up the 2 trips? So yes, we love it when guests combine trips. Many guests do. We help you logistically, and then we also reward you financially for doing so.
So you'll help us arrange transportation from the airport or the rail station to the hotel and things like that?
Absolutely. So we treat you like an adult, and whatever you need. So for some of our guests, they say, I see that you're going to start at Avignon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on May 22nd. Great. I'll see you then. In which case we say, wonderful. We'll see you in Avignon on May 22nd at our hotel, and we're going to spend the next, as Susie said, week together. Other guests say, hey, what would be really great is I'm going to arrive at the airport in Naples, and if I'm going to go to your beautiful 5-star hotel overlooking the bay and the fortress, I want somebody to meet me at the airport, transfer me there. By the way, I'd like to go into Rome a day or 2 before the trip, and I'd love to have a Classic Journeys Rome guide show me around for 2 days, Classic Journeys make a reservation for me in Rome, then, drive me from Rome down to Naples, and then, get me to my hotel. So as much or little as you need on the ground, pre-tour or post-tour, our team is here for you. In the same way that at NADHAB you have your adventure specialists who help a guest to book a tour, and then you have your adventure concierges who help you once you've reserved the tour. We have a very similar setup at Classic Journeys, where we have our travel experience team who will help you choose and reserve your tour, and then we have our guest services team that will help you once you've reserved your tour with whatever logistics you need associated with your tour.
Great. Well, that's good to know. Can you talk about what the typical age span of the guests are on the trip?
Yes, absolutely. So again, we've been at this for 26.5 years now, and when we started the company, the core group of guests who traveled with us were baby boomers, and I would say that baby boomers, so those who are about 50 and older, are still the core group of people who travel with Classic Journeys, but by no means any longer are they the only group. We just missed being baby boomers. We're Xers at 55 years of age, and so we sort of look like that next group of guests that are traveling with us. So you've got boomers, Xers, and that group makes up the vast majority of guests who are traveling with us.
And then we have
unless
family
until
programs.
you get into the family programs, and then we have grandparents who are bringing along their adult kids and then they're bringing along their grandchildren. So we regularly have guests who are who are kids and teens but of course they're traveling with their moms and dads or their grandparents. And then we have millennials who are traveling with us also, but I would say not as many millennials as Xers and boomers.
Great. And what countries are your travelers coming from in general?
Coming from almost all are United States, and about 90+% of our guests come from the United States. Maybe of the other 10%, it's Canada, and then kind of think of other major English-speaking countries, so UK, Australia, but overwhelmingly our guests hail from the United States, and then overwhelmingly from the United States.
Great. So how are the trips doing? Are they filling up? Can we still jump in and get on the trip soon?
I'm glad you asked. Yes, so it turns out that all of those, we call it pandemic fatigue, Rob. Basically, as probably everybody who's on this call, the reason why you're on this call is because you've been, over the last couple of years, thinking about those places where you'd like to travel. And when you saw the invitation from Ben and the NatHab crew of, you want to consider a walking tour, you thought to yourself, I've got to get out of the house. I've got to start traveling again. And you're right on trend with so many other travelers. People are getting back to traveling. It's not too late at all to plan, not for this spring or summer or fall or winter, but your timing is perfect if you're thinking about starting to plan now.
Our style of travel really works well for a lot of people because we're out in the fresh outdoors. We're out, seeking ways to, explore the world in small groups, out of the major metros, in the countryside. A lot of our dining is al fresco because we're in these beautiful places. So our style of travel really works well with a lot of people who are looking to get back out on the road, but just don't want to be stuck in a big city hotel and with the mobs. They want to be, out and away and on their own.
And again, that can be on your own in a group with other fellow Classic Journeys guests, or it could be in a private group, with just your people on your dates, Rob.
Well, it's very exciting because I know all of our guests out there are really excited to get back to traveling again. Now, unfortunately, that's the last question that we do have time for today. So I'd like to throw it back to you two in case you have any closing comments for us.
Well, I guess if we had any closing comments, it would be, I'm probably not saying anything that's surprising to anybody on this call, but travel fuels our souls as the travelers. It also is so meaningful to the people and places that we go and explore. And in the same way that people on this call are probably very passionate about what travel can do positively for the environment and for wildlife, travel has an incredibly powerful multiplier effect on the people and places that we visit. If it's done responsibly, in small groups, on foot, with expert local people, where the money that you spend goes directly through us into the local economies and to the local people, you have a tremendously powerful impact on the people and places where you go and sustaining the cultures of the people and places where you go. So we're here to fuel your soul and through you and with you to help sustain the people and cultures that we have the fortunate opportunity to meet and spend time with when you're exploring with Classic Journeys. We really hope you'll join us.
Thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And if you would, could you put your website up again so that we can see the web address and the phone number?
You bet. So here we are at Classic Journeys. And so the website address is classicjourneys.com. So CLASSICJOURNEYS.com. And our telephone number is 800-200-3887.
Well, thank you everyone who tuned in today. Now, if you're interested in the information on how you can travel with Classic Journeys on one of their upcoming adventures, check out their website or give them a call at the number on your screen. Or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out as well. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.